in the group, so the thread has me sort of in it most all the way through. There's a few things I wasn't directly involved with, but most is related to the foundations of Ultima, of course. And if you go back into the 1970s, that's where we start here. So from 1974 through 79, I worked on this type of machine. I bought this one on eBay, but this is the teletype that I used to use. It was connected with an acoustic modem, maybe 300 baud to a PDP-11, I think that it was. Never saw it. Off-site somewhere to run basic programs. These are the kinds. This is the Ultima direct predecessor called D&D-1, and I actually have all the way up through D&D-28. I mean, 28 of these games, or at least I began to write 28 of these games. A few of them I would abandon midstream and just grab another blank notebook and start writing the next increment up. But at least a half a dozen of the 28 were fully implemented, typed out on paper tape, and read in and ran. And if you look at the way these operated, they made little top-down graphs with asterisks for walls and spaces for corridors, dollar signs for treasure. A capital letter like capital A would be a giant ant, a dollar sign would be treasure. And you would want every time you would move, you'd have to wait for it to print. The next row of 40 characters or so. So it maybe took 30 seconds. The frame rate was 1 frame per 30 seconds or something. Just completely horrid. Are we missing somebody here?
Oh, here we are.
Yeah. Hey, wow, Maxine, you are getting so big.
Yes, she is.
So tall. So tall. And but then, of course, as you all are very well aware, the first personal computer came out, the Apple II, like the one over there. In fact, that is the Apple II that I used to create a number of these early games on. It often is up and running. I don't have it up and running right now, obviously. But in fact, when that first came out, I didn't even have a floppy disk drive. So I actually started writing on a cassette tape. And as soon as I realized this had graphics, of course, the first thing I sat down and did is I said, wow, instead of just using alphanumerics, I can do a game with line-drawn dungeons. There was a game that I've got up at my New York office called Escape, a little cassette game that I was inspired by, a low-res block graphics kind of maze game. And I sat down with my mother, and she showed me the geometry of how to draw perspective, and I did some little trigonometry to figure out how to create math formulas, and created this little game of Calibeth. And when I was creating this, I was working at a Computerland store, trying to convince people to buy these $2,000 or $3,000 machines in order to do the amazingly important tasks of, a terrible word processor, a balance your checkbook program, and maybe like a recipe card file keeper. And so when I showed the owner of the store, when he saw me working on this, and after hours in the back room, he said, "Wow, you ought to publish this." And because he said, this is way better than anything we're selling in the stores at that point. So I went out and spent my life savings of $200 on these little packaging bits and Ziploc bags. Sold about a dozen of them. I know that because this was number 12, and so it means I sold probably 11. I got a phone call about a week later from a company called California Pacific, who is one of the first publishers in the world. They said, hey, we'd like to put it in a bigger Ziploc bag and distribute it nationally. And they raised the price from $20 to $35. I didn't like their art. I thought their art was not much better than my mom's art. And so we flipped over to using Dennis the Bay, who I'd met here in Austin when I came to school here. He created this amazing piece of art that not only became the beginning of this line, but Dennis has made the covers for basically all games since, everything but Ultima 2. They sold about 30,000 copies of this. So if you do that math, my royalties was $5 a unit. That's $150,000, which was my income for 7 weeks of after-school time in high school. And so my dad's salary as an astronaut was about $65,000. So doubled or tripled my dad's salary with some after-school time in high school. That was obviously a good plan. And so my whole family was like, well, yeah, you ought to go do that again. And since this game was never meant to be, there's really no end to a Calibeth. You just kind of keep going and going. It's kind of infinite dungeon game.
Sort of a precursor to the RPGs of this day, where there is no real end.
Right.
Just complete open sandbox.
Yeah. And that's kind of what the top-down graphics looks on the other one. But then that's what really kind of inspired the first Ultima. So when I sat down and said, look, you know, that game wasn't meant to be published, but if I knew anybody was going to play it, I could at least put a point to the game in it, and you know, began to develop the characters and the pantheon of people you still remember from Ultima's, YOLO, etc. YOLO shows up in Ultima 1. He's actually probably the first of my real Austin friends to become part of the game. YOLO the Bard says, ho yo he hum, I've got the key, and you kill him and take the key, and rescue the princess. Poor YOLO. Then what was interesting about switching from Ultima 1 to Ultima 2 is we'll take a break to show you people and stuff. So if you, I see there's already people in there as well, but we have one of the artists' rooms is down in here. We also have animators and sound effects guys and all of the housing and armor who kind of stumbled into an early success, kind of like I did. But the guys running the business side were usually not particularly good business people. And even though I made, you know, $5 a unit on those things, they were making $25 a unit on those same games. And so these guys were rolling in dough. These early publishers were making a buttload of money, and a lot of them decided to live high on life. And starting with this company, the owner of that company, you know, sunk the company basically with his drug habit that was apparent the day that I met him. So I became a free agent. So I took my game back. With Ultima 2, you know, as soon as I said I was a free agent, the handful of other publishers that existed at the time said, yeah, we'd love to publish the next Ultima. Of course, it's a known franchise already. But then I said, by the way, I don't want my game in a Ziploc bag. I want my game in a box. I want a cloth map. I want manuals that start to be written fictionally. And everybody dropped out from being, because you know, nobody wanted to spend extra money on a box and a cloth map.
Never existed before.
Never existed. Right? So Sierra was the only company that agreed to it. And so that's why Sierra became my next publisher. But then they also basically had squandered most of their money and quit paying me. And that's what kicked off the Origin. During the same period, by the way, Dallas is one of the other guys that goes back to this era. In fact, I forgot to notice these little tags that are on the wall periodically. Those are everybody's birth date in the building. And so there's about 8 or 10 people that were born before I did my first game. But the other 20 people weren't even born through. What year were you born?
36. I'm an odd one over there.
All right, so you're older than you look. So you at least have a little age underneath you.
1980.
You're old, so yeah.
Oh yeah. But
year to be
how old
born.
were you when you did the teletype?
14 to 19. Started when I was 14. And but that's kicked off. So Origin was really my brother who I tried to get to help me collect money from these deadbeats unsuccessfully. Who, after the second time, he comes to me and says, Richard, you know, why don't you and I go into business together? He just was finishing up business school. He said, you know, I at least know that I should pay you before, you know, spending the money elsewhere. And so I can't guarantee we'll succeed in business, but I can guarantee I'll pay you first. And I was like, that's a better deal than I've ever had, so let's do it. And so Ultima 3 became Origin's first product. And what's interesting about this being our own first product is the first time we got fan mail. Anybody that wrote in about Ultima 1 and Ultima 2, that mail went to the company, not me. And so I actually generally never saw if anybody ever wrote in. But with Ultima 3, I did see what people wrote in. And it was interesting to now finally see what people were thinking when they were playing the games. And so, and I was kind of shocked at kind of what had happened, because I had sort of set it up this way, but didn't really feel it the same way that people were feeling it. They were noticing things like one of the things they like to do after playing the game is they go back in and kill all the NPCs, and they love to kill Lord British, and you know how much fun they had kind of basically lying and cheating and stealing their way to the top. And I'm going, well, you know, and also reading things into it that weren't there, or if they were there, were unintended. So, for example, in Ultima 3, somebody wrote me a letter saying, you know, how brilliant they thought it was that they were fighting this big monster near the end, and they were using their big sword or whatever they had, and getting most of the way through it, and but they couldn't quite ever defeat the creature until they switched to their dagger. And then with their dagger, the monster was killed. And how they thought it was really clever of me to make it the dagger the thing that was required to overcome this tough monster. And I'm going, I don't think I actually did that. You know? So I decided to go look at the code. And when I looked at the code, it turns out it was worse in that the code is actually written to where it literally doesn't matter what weapon you're using. There was literally no part of the damage calculation included what weapon you were using. It mattered what level you were, the higher level, and that's why you did do more damage as a bigger, tougher player. But if you switched weapons, it didn't matter at all, and that's true to this day. It won't matter what weapon you use, and I began to see, kind of these holes and gaps and misinterpretations throughout the product, and that's what set me off going, I want to create a game where the game actually watches your behavior and says, if you're going to lie and cheat and steal, you shouldn't be able to win. And the bad guys ought to do bad things to be worthy of your scorn. And it really, getting that feedback from players really set up this big change. And this is also where the word avatar in games came from, is this game, where prior to Ultima 4, your character in a game was known as your character, and you were playing not yourself, you were playing an alter ego. You could be playing Conan the Barbarian, or you could be playing who's the Tomb Raider woman. You could
Lara Croft.
And so you were embodying that other person. And I wanted to make a game where if you were going to go lie and cheat and steal, you're not getting away with it because it's your evil alter ego, or you're not getting away with it because you're role-playing Conan the Barbarian. I want it to be you, and you should feel bad about perpetrating evil. And you should live with the results of perpetrating evil. And that's when I came up with the word avatar, which I stole from a Sanskrit word that's commonly used in Hindu religions about gods manifesting on earth in human form as their avatar. But that's where the whole industry really got it from, is right here. And what's also interesting about this, and a lesson about this game that also came up with Ultima 4 and a lot of other times too, is I often feel that when we believe we're doing something that, and I'll even maybe personalize this a little more, an argument I have with this team, even people in here, the other very highly talented, very highly qualified people, Star, Chris, others, I don't necessarily, if I disagree with the rest of the team, I often still think I'm right, even though I think they're at least as smart as I am. And this is a case study as to why. When I was doing Ultima 4, my group of advisors would be my family, right? My brother who was my business partner, my employees that were there at the time, my parents who were investors, those would be my advisors. And when I started down this line and they saw what I was doing, they all thought I was making a terrible mistake. And they said, and the reason the logic they said is, look, Richard, you've got this fan mail that says people are enjoying playing in a particular way. And you are now going to deny all of them the ability to play, and the way they've just told you is why they enjoy your game. And I went, damn straight, that's exactly what I'm doing. And I even had the employees try to quit over the killing children thing, if you guys know that story, I think.
Oh yeah, great story.
But, and if you don't know, I'll tell you later. It's a long.
Real quick, what about the quote in the TV show this past week? The Ultima of Ultimas.
The Ultima of Ultimas. Well, it is, and this is still. If I had to pick one, this would be the one.
So you agree with that?
I agree with that. It's it's not the best written one, but it's the most monumental of them, and especially because their timing of the show was not including all of this. It was only these. So, of course, it's true for them. But even to this day, if I had to pick one, this would be the one that I would put up as a pedestal and say this is the best example of
That's the pivot point. Then.
this is the pivot point. This is the pivot. And
the avatar. Yeah.
Exactly. And what was funny about that too is so despite everyone saying it was a bad idea, it was the first #1 best-selling Ultima in the series. So it sort of proved me right. And the same thing happened with Ultima 7, so I'm kind of skipping way ahead. But in Ultima 7, when I insisted that if there's a light switch, it has to work. If there's a phone, it has to work. If there's a toilet, it has to be flushed. If it's a sink, it has to have water turn on and off. My devotion to the purity of everything must respond in the way it was. Everybody's going like, you're wasting tons of time. Like this team will tell me, I am wasting tons of time. But I'm like, nope, sorry, we're doing it to the 11th degree. It will happen. Just get used to it. We're going to do it. And I think it's the right thing to do, despite others' misgivings. Like Chris.
It's all Chris's fault.
Change it. Whatever Richard says.
On the occasion where Chris and I agree, which is actually at least 50% of the time actually, we know we're right when the two of us agree. We know like okay, that's it, and then hands down. No discussions
No more
over.
input. It's done.
No more input. Exactly. But then if you go from Ultima 4 to Ultima 5. Sorry, Bat. What's interesting, in Ultima 4 there is no bad guy, and there's the people that are good kind of tell you exactly what they're thinking. The people that are bad tell you exactly what they're thinking. There's no subtlety to the story at all. I actually think Ultima 5 is a much better told story. So if you're actually looking for good story craft, 5 is better than 4. But still, 4 is more special in the sense of the pivot. This is our massive QA and customer service department with the whopping 3 folks in there. This is the massive addition
More hair than
to
I'd expect Gary to have.
Don't feed them this right.
I'm going to pop in because I didn't introduce myself earlier. I'm Lazarus, NBNN.
Oh, okay. You sent me a friend invite.
I send everybody friends. I probably got just as many friends as Richard does. I started that back in the day, so it's this one. I said hello to Sarah when I popped in, and I says, I gotta go in and say hello. I didn't stop and say hello.
Right.
You want to introduce yourself to everybody?
You'll see me in online as my Mytazel character, and that's my first responder.
Okay.
So he has no dev stuff, and I am playing him. I walked into that world just like everyone else with nothing but the clothes on my back.
Nice.
And that's how I'm playing it. And with him, the only cheating I've done is referring to Sodamat and a little bit of wiki for crafting.
Shroud.
That's it. I haven't gone on the boards and looked for special secret places and stuff like that. I'm right now anyway. I'm having too much fun in exploring the world.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
going all around and seeing the different building types and zones and everything. Right here, I was testing. Someone had put in a ticket that they had a stuck spot in their town,
Working on the stuck spots.
and it's not stuck anymore. Look at that.
You gotta love it. And of course, the Attenwood.
Are you distracting my people?
I'm telling you. Do I better get out before he dings me with the oracle there?
We'll put you to work.
Just popping in to say hello to everybody.
It's great to see you.
Would you like to introduce yourself to the NBNN world out there?
Yes, I'm Sarah. I'm the customer service person that is always telling you, no, you can't have the thing. Or sometimes you can have the thing.
Or you tell us our stuff's in the mail, but we haven't received it yet.
It's coming. It's always coming. That's
you,
my
sir.
answer.
EA encouraged, didn't demand, but encouraged us to do things more in the EA way, which was a mistake.
How are you?
And instead of making the game we thought we should make, we sort of made the game production method more like EA, and I think the game suffered for it.
And if I may
Even though conceptually I
interject,
really like it.
if I may interject at this moment.
I'm Lazarus.
I'm Eric.
Eric, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
What are you guys working on in here
AI
today?
stuff. Just AIs, pets.
AI and pets. And who do we have over here with the headphones on?
Hi.
Hi, Lazarus, NBNN.
I'm JC.
Nice to meet you.
How's it going?
Your clothes the right color for slave
They'll do slave pimps and
What?
My phone's in here.
They're smaller, but I'm sure they'll work.
Okay.
Just get twice as many of them, I suppose.
Oh, speaking of people we don't feed, what was the change that?
Were you drinking that from the bottle?
City or Metro City. Sometimes it gets random counters that may pop up. That's yesterday.
You go for a screen?
So I gotta find something.
So if you accidentally click on new scene, it doesn't want to do
What do you want? Because mine looks gorgeous now that I upgraded.